All right, whether you earn $250,000 a year or not, you're going to be affected by the tax hikes on the wealthy. Why? Because it's going to kill economic growth that can make it harder to get a job. It seems so obvious to me. But a new Congressional Budget Office report, sort of mixed on the topic. Christian Dorsey is the Director of External and Government Affairs with the Economic Policy Institute. He thinks this silly report from the CBO proves me wrong, and he's here to disagree with me. Christian, thanks for coming back on the show. It's always fun, I have to say, in anticipation. Tell me, now you like the CBO report, right? You think it proves that we should go ahead and just tax the hell out of everybody?
No. Melissa, we released similar findings several weeks ago, so it's nice to see it confirmed by the Congressional Budget Office. It is not to say that when you increase taxes on the rich, there are no negative economic consequences. Of course there are. It will cost jobs. The question is...
Done, debate over.
It costs jobs much less than doing other things. If you read further in that report, it also talks about how the expiring payroll tax cut, as well as the expiring provisions on unemployment insurance, will actually cost up to 5 times as many jobs as tax cuts for the rich. So there are better ways to use our public dollars than tax cuts for the rich.
I just don't know why.
That's all we're saying.
I don't know why you would want to raise taxes on anyone when the economy is basically stalled. It just seems crazy to me.
Well, at some point, everyone says in Washington that we need to do something about our deficit. And here's a good place to start. If you need to actually bring in some revenue, the best place to do it is where it's going to do the least harm. And that's on tax cuts for the wealthy. That's something that is really unassailable. Now, if we were in conditions when we didn't have any deficit issues, of course, we wouldn't have any need to raise taxes on anyone. But we do have competing priorities, and we do have to find a way to start paying for them.
But I think we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. I mean, we're like drunken sailors. We've got this credit card. We think we can run it up forever, and we just can't.
But, that also has consequences. As everyone knows, with the looming so-called fiscal cliff discussion, if you cut spending too much, you also drive the economy into an abyss. So, we'd all like to say we simply cut spending and live within our means, but it's not as simple as that. You can also cut spending too much so that you actually hurt the economy that you're supposed to help.
So, and I agree with what you're saying, and this is way too civil, so I've got to try and derail it somehow. or else it's just no fun, right? I mean, what's the point of doing it?
Bring it on, Melissa. Bring it on.
Yeah, we do. It's true. There have been many times in the past when we've actually lowered marginal rates and increased revenue. I mean, if I were to concede that this is a revenue problem, which I'm not going to, but for the sake of argument, I mean, under President Kennedy, for example, we reduced the top rate from more than 90% down to 70%. In that time, revenue into the Treasury went up from $94 billion to $153 billion by lowering the marginal rate right there. I mean, there's your guy. Look at him.
We can look at that, but remember, that was the 1960s. The problems that we have today are a little bit different. And the problems in our economy right now, the reason that we're in this economic malaise is because we have this big gap between what the economy is producing and what it can produce. And the way to fill that gap or to shrink that gap is to get more people out there buying things and spending money.
So, but raising taxes doesn't... No, you're talking about raising taxes. I mean, I agree with you. We need to get people out there investing, buying, doing all these things. So raising taxes on anyone is then super crazy.
Yeah, but if you take tax increases on people who are spending relatively less because they've already got a whole bunch of money and investing in ways to get people who don't have as much to spend more, that's much more efficient. It makes much more sense.
It does. Rich people spend a lot of money.
Rich people have a lot of money. They're already spending it. They're not going to spend any less because they're getting a marginal tax rate increase. It's not like all of a sudden, Michael Bloomberg or Mitt Romney are going to say, oh, we can't go out to dinner next week. They're still going to spend their money. This is a matter of saying, how do we get people who are not at that level to have the conditions where they can spend?
How about in the 80s? I mean, it was the same experiment where they lowered marginal tax rates, and once again, you saw revenue go up. They phased in a 23% cut in tax rates. Revenues 1981 to 1988 went from $599 billion to $909 billion. I'm just saying, if the problem's revenue and you want to bring in more money to the Treasury, it seems like there have been periods in time when we have done it definitively, according to the math. Why don't we do that again?
That is true, but we also, we looked at the 60s and we looked at the 80s. How about we look at the 2000s, where we had our most recent tax cut regime, and what did it do in terms of the economic recovery? It gave us the worst performance in economic growth and the worst performance in job creation. So, we can look at different periods and see that, tax cuts are not necessarily the solution in all circumstances.
Yes. All right, Christian, thank you for disagreeing with me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, Melissa, I hope we can do it again.
We will, without question. I'm going to be less civil next time.